I want to bring in Major General Molan. First of all, thank you very much for joining me from Australia, Major General. Great to talk to you.
Thanks, Piers. Thank you.
Now, you oversaw this operation in Australia, where you basically had the same problem. A lot of people coming in or trying to come in illegally to Australia, using boats on the water. Again, you had the people smugglers, the trafficking and so on. And it was pretty draconian, the way that Australia went about this. But indisputably, in terms of stopping the boats, incredibly successful. The downside, from what I could ascertain from studying this, was that the places that they were being sent, the detention centres that they were being placed in, the conditions were not very good and that people were having a bad time there. Talk me through, from your perspective, how it worked.
Piers, the main thing behind our approach to this particular problem was exactly what Anne said, and that is resolve. We had the resolve. We had about 80% of the Australian population backing the government at the time. The government internally was solid, and I think that is the single most important thing. If Priti Patel is prepared to continue to try, and if she can portray it because it is, not as spin, but because it is as both effective in that you control your borders and humane, then that's very, very important. I don't believe that the places that we sent what we called illegal maritime arrivals, and I just listened to another debate on another network, and they were all calling them refugees. Now, these people are not refugees. We chose the term illegal maritime arrivals because you can only come into Australia through legal ports of entry. Therefore, that's indisputable. The people are not refugees, but we still assessed them very, very seriously before they were sent everywhere. So we designed this policy, and it had three legs. The first one was that we were prepared to turn the boats back. We had a lot more sea space in which to turn the boats back than the English Channel, but that was very contentious, and it only worked once there was a lot of publicity and that the people were arriving back in Indonesia or in Sri Lanka, and there's a lot of publicity surrounding it. The second thing was that we finished the processing of the migrants offshore, so they were never subject to the activists. And activists, God bless them, that's their right to be activists, but they hold serious concerns. If it was illegal, we would not have been able to do it. If it was inhumane, we should not have done it. But the activists will always say they've got serious concerns. We've all got serious concerns. This is hard and tough policy. And the third part of our actual offshore, the third part of our border control policy was the fact that we only ever, those that did get through and got onto the mainland because we excised certain areas from our legislation, those people that got here were only ever given temporary protection visas and not a higher level of visa that would open them up to activist legal action.
And would you say the last thing, I understand that you always believe firmly that you had to have all three for it to work. When you look at what the British government is trying to do you see flaws in this system? Obviously, they're facing huge resistance from the European Court of Human Rights and some British courts as well getting involved with some of the asylum seekers yesterday. But do you see flaws in the way we're going about this system?
Well, and I do see flaws, but some of those flaws are the result of geography and areas such as that. I mean, if you have islands that you can excise, that's a long process in itself, and that may or may not be possible, which then keeps the illegal maritime arrivals away from the legal system within the UK. That might work. The greatest opportunity that Europe and the UK missed in controlling this was that you didn't do this during when people were moving across the Mediterranean, and thousands more died. The great moral high ground that we were able to occupy was that we stopped people dying at sea. 1,200 people died. 50,000 came to Australia in 600 boats, and 1,200 died at sea, and we pulled them. Our Navy pulled them out of the water, half eaten by sharks and rotten by drowning. And that was the moral high ground. It's got to be legal and it's got to be humane. And the humanity, Piers, is that by having this tough policy, we could still offer to people who are really refugees permanent residency.
Okay.
Our permanent residency, we're in the top 3 or 4 countries in the world.
Very interesting, actually, the way Australia went about this, not without its own controversy, but certainly very effective in stopping people. I mean, hardly any boats now try and get in. I know there's been 1 or 2 recently, but it's a tiny, tiny number that try, and they've clearly been deterred.